Hello, hello, Marcus Kleiss here. I am super excited for this video. I am going to be unpacking a lot of information, and honestly, this information I think will help any user of the all-new Meguiar's hybrid paint coating that's just started to hit the stores. I am going to give you some insight on this product and teach you some things about this, whether you are a DIYer, whether you're an actual professional detailer, or somewhere in between. I really think that you will find plenty of information in this video that will help you have a better experience about this and understand why it exists and how it works. But before we dive into that, I gotta unpack a little something here. Some of you guys may know who I am and may know about my background. I've been detailing for 20 years. Most recently, I spent about 4.5 years as the professional product manager at Meguiar's. I left Meguiar's as an employee at the end of last year, or towards the end of last year, and no longer affiliated with them in any kind of capacity, financially or otherwise. Just want to put out there though, full transparency that I did work there, and I was also a moderator on their online forum, Meguiar's Online, for 8 years. So just to kind of explain why I know so much about this product, I was involved in the development of it. Therefore, I hope that some of those insights that I can share with you will be really unique. I have had this on vehicles of my own, as well as cars out in the world that I've been testing on for well over a year. So really, I'm gonna have some unique insight that nobody else can provide you quite yet. So hang in there, we're gonna unpack a lot. But first, we've got a 2020 Porsche Taycan 4S. Sweet ride. I just pulled it in out of the rain. It is raining outside, so I'm going to do a rinseless wash here in the garage, get it cleaned up a little bit so I can do a proper paint analysis, kind of inspect it, see what we're starting with, and then we'll come up with a game plan, and I will walk you through what you need to do prior to applying the hybrid paint coating. So we'll get started first with the rinseless wash. Okay, so we have gotten the vehicle washed and dried, and immediately after that, what we did was inspect the paint. So we use an inspection light. You can get one from Meguiar's, you can get one from a lot of different companies, a lot of different ways you can do this, but the point of an inspection light is so that you can use that light to inspect the level of defects. Normal fluorescent lights, even some LEDs in garages, may not actually show the level of defects that are on there, whether that's water etching, water spots, swirls, or scratches. And yes, even brand new cars can absolutely have all of those types of defects. And the reason you want to check for that is that it will affect the performance of coatings as well as waxes or sealants. But particularly with coatings, you need an even surface, and there's something called surface tension. And this is what is going to dictate how impressive all that water beading is on the surface after the coating is done and being applied. So you want to make sure that the paint is in pretty good condition. The other thing you want to inspect for is embedded contamination. Washing a car will not remove all types of contamination that could be on the surface. There are above and below surface contamination. So there's a few other things you want to be aware of, and the directions talk about this, so don't worry about having to memorize everything I'm saying, but it talks about the need to perform a decontamination on the can itself and on the packaging. And there's two ways to go about that. You can use a clay bar. This is the professional Meguiar's clay, the C2000, and you would use some of this with a spray lubricant, and you would use that lubrication and use that to rub off the above surface contamination. That can be overspray paint, that can be iron fallout, very common. It comes from industrial fallout, it comes from your brakes, it's dust on the road and it lands on your car. The dew activates it, it turns into rust essentially and bonds to your vehicle. That won't come off with washing your car. The other thing is you can use a chemical-based decontamination product. This happens to be the D1801 is the part number. It's called Wheel and Paint Iron DECON. iron decontamination. Iron is really probably the most common contamination that you're going to be dealing with that adds, it's usually going to look like little tiny specks of kind of yellow or brown. When you take like a wrapper off of this or a sandwich bag, put it over your hand and spray a quick detailer on there and rub the surface, it will magnify those bumps. And that is how you can tell how smooth your surface is. Just a bare hand on clean paint might feel totally smooth. Using that bag will magnify something that you may not have noticed. And it's important to get that off as best you can because that will get in between the coating and the paint and make it so that instead of bonding to your paint, which is optimal, it's going to bond to junk, to contamination, iron fallout, tree sap, overspray, paint, different things. So you want to get that off so you have a clean bond for the coating to bond to your paint. So in this particular case, when I inspected this and did the inspection, and to save you guys some time because we have a lot to cover, I'm not going to show you all that, but there really was nothing on here. So that leads me to believe that this was a vehicle that spent very little time outside. I know that it is garaged and maybe driven once a week. It's a pretty brand new car. Not all new cars are going to be clean though. It depends on a whole bunch of stuff. So we got lucky. And the other thing was the swirls were extremely, I would say, light. In fact, it looks almost like someone did a one-step paint correction, which means to either use a compound or a polish and remove swirls or scratches or etchings, things like that, below surface defects to add gloss and even and level out the surface. So we have a surface that based on what the customer's desires were, they didn't want to pay for a paint correction, which is totally fine. This is much more realistic too for the average person, doing this on their car. If your car's in pretty good condition and pretty new, you might be able to get away with not doing any paint correction. If you do have some more of the defects when you check it with the light, then you're going to want to do at least one, if not two steps of paint correction in order to increase the gloss and remove those imperfections. Not just to make it look better, which it will make a big difference, big difference. But the other thing is it will affect how well that coating is able to bond and perform, both durability and the quality of the water beading. But to be clear, you do not have to perform either a paint enhancement or a paint correction every time that you apply the hybrid paint coating. It really is going to depend on what you're starting with. So now that we've kind of got the initial prep out of the way, let's dive a little bit deeper into what this product really is, what the heck is a hybrid paint coating, and really how it fits in the lineup of other products that Meguiar's has, as well as what you may be using in order to take care of your vehicle. Okay, now we're gonna get into the good stuff, the inside scoops, kind of the breakdown, so you can really understand what this is and make sense out of it. Before we do that, I just gotta ask, please, if you like what you're seeing so far, hit that like, hit that subscribe. If you don't mind, please, I'd really appreciate it. And I promise you, the follow-up videos that are gonna come soon after about this product and others, as processes and all that stuff, they're gonna be great, they'll be worth your time. Thank you. All right, now let's get into what hybrid paint coating is and isn't. First of all, the name, it's a little confusing, probably for a lot of people, and I appreciate and respect that. And probably the main thing is, we have hybrid ceramic, a whole line of a family of products, if you will, both at a consumer level as well as the professional level. You have the pro version at Meguiar's, and so why doesn't this say ceramic? That's not an oversight. It's because this product is not technically, by Meguiar's definition of ceramic, which is probably a little bit tighter than what I've seen in the rest of the industry, not ceramic. What it is though is hybrid in terms of it is a mix of polysiloxane, which is a kissing cousin, a close cousin of ceramic. And in fact, some other brands out there are a little bit looser on what they consider ceramic or not. They refer to polysiloxane based formulas as ceramic quite often, okay? But Meguiar's trying to be a little bit more accurate. I remember there were a lot of discussions in the lab about this, and this was something they talked about. So the other half of this is there is a very unique and the result of an incredible amount of work that took years of research in the lab, a polymer, and it's a very broad term, the word polymer can mean a lot of things, and I'm going to intentionally leave it that vague so I don't get sued into oblivion. But basically, there is something mixed in with this polysiloxane that was developed by Meguiar's and on the R&D side, and it's really some pretty incredible stuff. And the reason that they went that route as opposed to ceramic is because I'm gonna, be a little bit honest with you. There's a lot of stuff in some of these ceramic coatings out on the market that frankly pose some health risks. And one of the downsides of being as big as Meguiar's is that we live in America. People like to sue people, and so they like to play it extra safe. And we were not allowed to use certain components that are found in a lot of other coatings. Now, not to say the other ones are the end of the world dangerous, but we were just told that, hey, you cannot use some of these things, find another way. And through a lot of work and trial and error, we did come up with something really honestly incredibly phenomenal. And in the end, we were able to come up with something that delivered, they talk about on here, professional level paint protection. I'll get a little bit more into that, without having some of that bad juju kind of in the formula. So that's kind of the first part. So this is a coating. Now, what does coating mean? Coating, in terms of how Meguiar's kind of looks at it, has to do with both a measurable thickness in terms of what's left behind, but in my opinion, personally, probably more importantly, is that there is a curing mechanism in this that you're not going to find in some of the other hybrid ceramic products. You're not going to find in waxes or sealants. The level of cure, just to put it very simply, is much more complete. Think of a cross-link kind of concept that takes place with this product. And that is what they talk about with the True Cure technology that's on the packaging. That was a proprietary thing that was really developed and was really kind of a cornerstone of what makes this product so effective at what it does. And the benefits of a coating versus a sealant or a wax, whether that's sprayed on or liquid or paste, is that it's going to set up once it's set up, and it's going to be much more resistant to both physical agitation. So think when you're washing with a wash mitt, you're rubbing on it. When you're using a drying towel, you're drying on it. People bump into it, things happen, as well as chemical resistance. If you're using aggressive bug removers, APCs, whatever, degreasers, if you're taking it through a touchless car wash, God forbid a real tunnel car wash with brushes, don't do that. This type of a formula, a real coating, is going to do much better to resist being removed and broken up by those things. So it's a very important distinction to have a coating versus a sealant. And you will notice if you read the copy on any of the Meguiar's hybrid ceramic products, pro or consumer, none of them call themselves coatings. Not one. It's not referenced. They aren't coatings. They've never made that claim. A lot of people refer to them as coatings, but they're not. Now, there's a ceramic aspect to them, and it has more to do with other aspects of the product. They're really phenomenal, but not about the curing aspect, okay? So that's an important thing to unpack and to understand the difference there. And again, the True Cure cross-linking technology, one of the key things that is only in hybrid paint coating that is not found in the other Meguiar's products that's gonna make it last longer. Now, the durability claim. It says 1 year plus paint protection. I want to unpack that a little bit because, frankly, I was involved with developing kind of product performance attributes and things like that. This was not my product because I wasn't the consumer product manager. And, all the marketing copy was all decided, the final copy, I was gone at that point. So I personally would say, how do you make sense out of that? And I would look at it this way. For one, we all know that we do not all treat our cars the same way. We live in different regions. Some areas have snow and salt on the roads. Other areas do not. Some areas get 6 inches of rain a year, and some areas are going to get 30 inches of rain a year. You're going to have different levels of smog and pollution in the air, which is going to cause acid rain. And and then there's how old was your car? Was it already 5 years old? Was it 10 years old? Did you neglect the heck out of it? How well did you prep it? All of these things are going to play roles. There's so many variables, it's unbelievable, that determine how long a product lasts. So the 1+ year, that is based on a combination of real world use. I have had this on a personal vehicle of mine for over a year and personally observed its ability to last that long. I've also had it on other vehicles out in testing that I detailed, and then there were other people that applied some in other parts of the country to get different kind of environments and weather. So this has been put through a whole new level of testing and verification in terms of durability that There's another product that exists that is going to come up a lot, probably because it shares a similar can, and everyone thinks, oh my gosh, it's the same stuff, a new name. They got rid of Fast Finish. It's not actually totally gone. It's just not in all stores. But is this the same thing, and they just changed the name on it? Absolutely not, first of all. Anybody that claims that has positively no firsthand knowledge of what they're talking about. These formulas were not even developed by the same people. They're completely different. Not to say this isn't a fantastic product, but this product had talked about lasting up to a year, but when you looked at the test method that was used to develop that, at that time, was based on 52 consecutive car washes. And what we found, frankly, just being totally honest, in the real world, it didn't always translate. In some areas, with some cars, it did last that long. In other areas, it was closer to 6 months or somewhere in between. So Meguiar's went back to the drawing board in terms of talking about durability on here. Yes, they both talk about 1 year, but I can positively tell you that the 1 year on this is a whole different type of testing. The lab verification, this was put through weather center testing. This was tested so many different regions, so many different ways, in the lab, out of the lab, and it's a much more real world accurate term to talk about this lasting for a year plus. Now, the other thing too is, when you put this on your vehicle, you have enough extra product, and I'll talk about this later, in here to be able to reapply. Frankly, for most vehicles, in most situations, you could probably get years of coverage out of what's in that can. But per initial application, you should get a year or more in most situations without even putting toppers on it by its own right. So that is a legit claim. Now, to step back for a second though about the professional level paint protection. I'm gonna take a little bit of an issue with that. Personally, unless you break it down and look at it in kind of a different way, and that is, are there professional grade coatings out there that are gonna last longer than this? Yes, absolutely. First of all, they're gonna probably cost 10 times as much or more to have put on your car. It's an entirely different ballgame. You as a Joe consumer can't even get them. It's an entirely different situation. This product, the trade-off of how this product was designed was that it was made to be consumer friendly, but to give you a very similar experience once it's on there to a professional coating, but without the number one nightmare, which is the high spots. If you're new in your research on coatings, you've probably come across this term, and it has to do with missing, basically, when you're wiping off the excess after you've applied it on the surface and it's set up and cured, and you go to wipe that off. If you miss an area with a lot of pro-grade coatings, sometimes you only have 30 seconds, maybe 60 seconds, a couple minutes at most. If you don't wipe it off, you're either sanding it off or compounding or polishing it off in order to fix that high spot, or it's going to be a big, ugly kind of smear, if you will, in the paint. With this product, what's really phenomenal about it is that it's able to give you long-term durability, but it has an extremely forgiving window of initial application where it creates a layer over itself so that it doesn't completely initially cure. And you could come back a week later, up to a week later or so, and if you missed a spot, spray a little bit more product on an applicator and gently wipe that area and work it out without having to sand, compound, or polish. That's a phenomenal thing. I can't tell you the level of stress that you can have, working on a car, especially if you don't have like completely perfect lighting and you miss some little spot down on the corner or on a mirror or, just somewhere out of view. And then next, oh gosh, I found it a couple hours later or the next day before you deliver it or something. It's a nightmare. You're taking that out of the equation with this product. It really is a consumer-friendly application. So that's kind of the main stuff I want to break down in terms of just the main marketing claims that Meguiar's is making about this product. The True Cure thing is really the key to think about that sets this product apart. Now, the attributes that this product at a pro level will develop, though, where I will agree completely, is that the hydrophobics of this product, which means the quality of the beading, how easily it pushes water or other liquids off of your surface, is unbelievable. That was a huge focus of this product. It has been for Meguiar's for a long time, for the history of the company, but really this is going to stand well above a lot of the other consumer grade products if you put them side by side in terms of how easily this will shed off the water. And that matters more than some people realize, because When your car gets dust and pollen and contamination on it, either from sitting in the outside or being driven down the road, and all that stuff lands on your vehicles and settles, and then you get some dew on your vehicle overnight, that next morning, if you don't have quality hydrophobics, the way it releases, and there's beads sitting still and there's beads rolling off. This is gonna help them roll off. It's great to look at a picture of a bead sitting on your car, sitting still. But what really matters is when you hit it with some wind, or if it's on a vertical panel, how easily does it let go? How easy does that bead go away? And it takes with it the dust, the dirt, the pollen, that contamination. And it's called self-cleaning. That's what that term means, self-cleaning. It means it literally cleans the car on its own as you drive it. I used to have about a 15-minute commute. Most of it was in traffic pre-COVID. And when I would maybe hit 55, 60 for a 5-minute spurt every morning, that was all it took to clean off my entire truck, which at the time was parked outside. I didn't have a big enough garage. And that's why I fell in love with this technology, was how easily it kept my vehicle clean longer. The other thing is, when you wash and dry your vehicle, this is the answer as to why do I need this on my car? Why do I want this on my car? This is the number one reason for me personally. When I'm washing and drying my vehicle, I don't want to spend all afternoon or hours fighting, getting it to dry, and all that. Drying a car is a nightmare. This makes it so easy, and it will dry easier. You will feel the difference. You will see a difference, how much easier it is to wash and dry your vehicle, that it becomes less of a chore and more of an enjoyable experience. It's fun to see that stuff fly off your car when you hit it with even a consumer grade pressure washer and blast off all that contamination. It's an enjoyable experience. It's easier and it takes significantly less time and less effort, which means when you're hitting it with that towel to dry that, and the final dry, you're not gonna have to push as much. You're not gonna have to go over it as many times to dry it, which means less chance of swirls or scratches on your paint. So it's going to make it easier to keep your vehicle in good condition longer with less effort. It makes it easier to take care of your vehicle. That's a great way to look at it. As with any wax or sealant or coating that Meguiar's has, it does have UV protection, protection against the sun, which is super important. But it's, again, that other thing that I think stands apart from the other products that I've tested, even some professional grade products, is its ability to help in the self-cleaning. There is a lot of science that goes into that, and it's something that certain brands honestly have done a terrible job at. And it's really something that once you see it for yourself and experience it for yourself, you will not go back, because it is such an incredible thing to have. Now, let's also unpack kind of what comes in the kit. I don't have the box here. I've got the can. I apologize for that. And in fact, this little guy is this same size bottle and type of bottle will come. This was a pre-production bottle that I got to keep as a keepsake. This label has changed. It will look more like this. It's called Surface Prep. The point of that product is after you've done your wash, your dry, your inspection, and if you need to do a decontamination either with clay or a spray decontamination product, the next thing you're gonna do is spray it with Surface Prep, and you're gonna leave that on that surface, a cool surface, out of the direct sun for a minute. And if it's cooler outside, if it's cold out, up to 2 minutes. Leave it on a panel at a time and then gently wipe that off. That's gonna remove any oils from your fingerprints, from a polish you may have used, any residue from compounder polish. It's gonna get that kind of stuff off. And again, it's meant to leave that paint completely bare and clean so that the coating itself can bond optimally. It's really important. This is the same formula as the professional product, M122 Surface Prep. You get that professional formula unchanged in the consumer kit, which is awesome. It's a great product, really great for taking off dried compound or polish. So this, you will do a wipe down on the entire exterior. Now, this is called hybrid paint coating. Paint coating. This is a coating that was optimized for bonding to paint. You can get it on your glass, you can get it on your trim. It's not going to last as long. You'll wipe it off very quickly and easily. It really doesn't bond to glass on its own. But I have noticed in my personal testing, this is not recommended by the brand, but personal testing, that on certain plastics, like pebble textured kind of rough plastics, it actually does a really great job of leaving a coating on there as well, in my experience. That's my personal experience, and it beads water up and makes it easier to clean that trim and protects it as well. So I personally put it on most exterior trim. Another pro tip is that I have done on my personal vehicles quite a bit of testing over paint protection film, also called Clear Bra or PPF. It can be put over that, bonds very well to that, and does a fantastic job of making that easier to clean. Most PPF out there is kind of grabby. It's not very slick feeling. This will definitely make it more slick and make it easier to wash and dry and clean. And then one other huge benefit to me is that you can put this over vinyl, and that includes matte and satin. Now again, it's not the official, I don't know if that's the official stance, but that's my personal experience. You may get a tinge of darkness on a matte or satin surface, but in my opinion, it just really makes it look fresh and clean and even. The one key thing, and this is true for both paint and vinyl and these other surfaces, but really for vinyl or satin, matte or satin surfaces, always spray the product onto the applicator, not onto the surface. And I'm gonna tell you to, pro tip, do that with your spray waxes and your detailers, especially if you're working outside or if you're having issues with streaking. That's a great way to increase the odds of having a nice even application, is spray your product into your applicator pad or towel. So very versatile product in that you can use this on a lot of the exterior surfaces. You don't need to tape everything off and spend hours and hours prepping like that. If you get it on your trim, it's not the end of the world. If you don't really want to mess around with putting it on your trim, try and avoid getting on there. If it gets on there, just wipe it off with the towel and you're fine, okay? The other thing is it does come with an applicator like this, and you can buy extra of these if somehow, you know, you drop yours, or you know, you keep your excess product and want to do a touch-up coat down the road in a year or something like that. You can buy extra, they're called even coat applicators in 2-packs, I think, from Meguiar's. So you can get your hands on more of those. There's enough product in here to do more than one car. It will also come with 2 full-size towels, and these are, I believe, 16 by 24 is the dimension on those, which is a good sized towel. And that's a very important thing. And we're gonna kind of get into the application nuances real soon here. And those towels are gonna be one of the most important things that you wanna pay attention to what we're talking about, because one of the only ways that you'll have a bad experience with this product is if you're not using your towels correctly or you don't have enough of them. So why don't we shift over and work on showing you how the application of this works. Okay, now we're finally getting to the part where we actually get to apply the coating and talk about that process. My suggestion to you would be to get a microfiber towel other than the 2 that come in the kit. And you know, this is a Supreme Shine. It's a 16 by 24. It does not have to be this towel, but I do recommend a larger one. A small 12 by 12 is really not optimal. And fold this into 1/8 like I just did. And this is more important for when you're removing the coating than for doing the surface prep, but nonetheless, it's a habit that I recommend, is to do this and keep track of flipping and turning your towel so you're using the maximum amount of surface area on your towel, okay? Now, this is the Pro bottle. I just happen to have this handy. So same exact juice that's gonna come in that kit in that smaller bottle. What you're basically gonna do is you're just gonna spray the product onto a panel. Now, at this particular time, it's raining and it's cold, it's in the low 60s outside. This stuff's not gonna dry fast on you at this type of a temperature. If I was in the mid upper 70s or above, I'm gonna do a panel at a time. But basically, you're gonna spray this product onto the panel, just a nice light, even coat, and let it dwell on that surface. And the point of this is, as it has a little bit of dwell time, it is gonna be breaking down any potential oils that may be left over if I were to do polishing step, or just any other residue transfer, either from my hand or that was just left over somehow from the decontamination process. This is really important when you're applying any kind of a coating. This final surface prep type step is gonna really make or break how well that coating is able to bond to that paint, because you want 100% coating bonding to 100% paint. You don't want something else mixing in there. That is what is going to cause severe degradation of durability, and it will reduce the effectiveness of your how good the water hydrophobics are as well. So in this temperature, I could let this sit again for about 2 minutes. It's not going to dry off. Again, if it was hotter, it would dry off faster, anywhere between 30 to 60 seconds. So I'm going to let this dwell a little bit. After it's dwelled, there's nothing complicated here. It's a very simple concept. You're just going to take your towel and you're just going to gently wipe these areas. Now I'm leaving a little bit of product behind. I'm not removing 100% of it on this first wipe. That is okay. That's not necessary at that first pass. I just want to mix in some physical agitation, the mechanical, physical of the towel rubbing the area with the chemical, which helps to break that stuff up and help to remove and clean that surface. So I will then flip the towel. I got my heavy wet side and I have a dry side here. I'm going to go to the dry side, and then I'm going to do kind of a quick final pass on this panel using the dry side of that towel. And that's going to allow me to get a nice, clean, even, no streak dried area. I'm going to repeat this process for the rest of the vehicle, typically doing 1 to 2 panels at a time in the cooler weather, 1 at a time if it's warmer out. Okay, so now we just finished wiping the entire exterior of the vehicle down with the M122 surface prep. Making a point also to make sure that we check for any potential areas where water is trapped, like under mirrors and handles, anywhere where it might drip down over the paint as we're applying the coating. That would create an issue. You're going to want to make sure you get that out. If you've got a little tiny blower or compressed air or something, it's always good to blow out those cracks before you apply the coating to make sure that you don't have any interference with that water. Now, as far as the directions themselves and how they explain this, a couple things. I have here something to show that the temperature is, well, it's actually about 65 degrees, probably because all the lights I have on in the garage. It was about 60 before. So it says on here, it has a range of what's acceptable temperature-wise to apply the coating. More so than humidity, but mostly temperature will play a role in how quickly you want to remove the coating after you've spread it out on the surface. The bottom end of the spectrum, it says right off the bat in the directions, do not apply below 60 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? Always work in the shade on a clean, cool, dry surface. Now, it's in the low 60s, mid 60s in here now, so we're okay. Earlier it was literally dipping just under 60, but what I'm gonna do because of that, because it is a little bit in the lower end, and because this is such a safe product in terms of you're not in trouble if you go a little bit too long, I'm gonna wait a little bit longer after I apply that onto that panel. Now, the other thing is, it says to spray for 3 seconds the product onto the applicator itself, onto the face of the applicator, for your initial application of the product. So give it a little bit of a shake, and essentially you're going to spray it on the surface here for about 3 seconds. And you want to make sure that you get about as even a coverage as you can on the face of that pad. That's going to make sure that when you go to put it on the paint, that you're not leaving little pockets where there's no product that's being applied in that process. The other thing is, it's going to talk about using roughly a 2 foot by 2 foot area is usually the size of the area you're going to want to apply it to. Obviously on a fender like this, you're not going to break out the math and do all your geometry to figure it out. And it does talk about also a crosshatch pattern. Now, when I first start putting this product on, the first thing I'm going to do, and I'll show you another angle to get a better view of this, I'm going to see, does that look like it's enough product or not? It looks like it's a little bit thin for me, so I'm going to apply a little bit more onto the applicator so that I can at least make sure that I can see, okay, where I'm putting that product, it is going on even. It talks about using a crosshatch pattern. Now, based on the shape of the fender, I like to just basically follow, or the panel I should say, and this is particularly a curvy fender. I'm going to do roughly a 2 foot, so I'm going to cut this thing in half, and I'm going to go in alternating directions. It doesn't have to be crosshatch, but the idea is overlapping and go in different directions. The point of this, it's not like chemically you need to do this in order for it to work. It's more about making sure you get some nice even coverage. And on a white vehicle or light vehicle, because this goes on to the eye relatively thin, it's going to be a little bit difficult to see. So just be thorough. And again, we're not racing the clock like you are with a lot of other coatings. So if you take a little bit more time, not a big deal. In this particular case, I'm going to leave this on here to cure for a little bit. So I've got enough time that I can actually put some more product onto the face of the applicator and finish applying it here to this panel. So I'm going to trace the outer edges of this panel. That's a personal kind of preference to make sure that I have covered all that area, and I'm going to work my way back in from that outer edge, kind of making sure that I cover all those edges and just hit it a couple different directions to make sure that the product's being evenly applied. This perfect crosshatch pattern is not nearly as important with this formula as some liquid traditionally applied ceramic coatings. So you're gonna see, and it's gonna be hard to pick that up on the camera, but there is a rainbow type hue that you will see on that surface. It's almost like an oil sheen, or sometimes like Dawn dish soap can do this, like you can see that in the water where you see that pattern. That is where you know that that product is across the surface. So again, giving it about 1 minute there. I'm gonna set this down. Now these are the supplied towels, 16 by 24. Again, fold this so that you end up with 8s. And this is so important for this product. This is one of the most important things when you're applying this product, is making sure that you have 2 good, clean, fresh towels. Older towels can get contaminated with other product that clogs the kind of channels that are in microfiber. If you look at a microscope of what microfiber looks like, they can get clogged. Or if you don't properly launder them, too much heat or something like that, you can also damage them. So you want 2 of these. And the reason is you're gonna use 1 to initially go over that area. It should feel pretty darn slick when you're doing this. I'm gonna use this first towel and I'm gonna do my initial pass, kind of going over this. And I can actually see it's setting up pretty decently. And I'm gonna make sure that I get this initial pass with one side of this towel all the way through, okay? Once I feel like I've confidently leveled it off, I'm not using tons of pressure. I'm basically using the weight of my hand to just making sure I don't drop the towel. I'm gonna flip it upside down like that. So now I know, okay, that's the wet side there. I'm gonna take my second towel and I'm gonna come back over this. Again, no pressure. I'm just making sure that I have a clean, uncontaminated, unclogged towel so that I can go over this area and make sure that I don't leave anything behind that I don't want to. It's really not a complicated concept, but I will tell you, and I'm gonna flip this that way. Remember that this is my wet side of my first pass towel here. This product, the one thing you absolutely have to pay attention to is that when you remove this from the surface, it will clog your microfiber pretty quickly. And how you will tell that you're not rotating your towel to a fresh side is that, particularly on darker colored cars, you may see this a little bit more, you will start to see it's almost kind of smearing a little bit. It's not going to be pulling it out. And the reason is, frankly, the part of the microfiber that is able to clean and grab stuff, it's full. It's been filled with the coating that you removed, the excess coating, when you're leveling it. So that is why it's super important that you have at least 2 towels. If you've got a couple more nice quality microfibers, have them handy. It's the one thing that I really suggest that's not in the kit to have handy, and make sure you have it around. So I've done this. I'm gonna repeat that process now around the vehicle, and just simply do that same process all the way around for this first coat. And then we'll take a look at that and we'll talk about putting on a second coat. Right now I'm removing, and I'm on my second towel, second pass with the second towel. It is shocking how slick this already is. I mean, you will feel when you use this product an incredible amount of slickness. It's one of the best attributes of this product. It's not really on the packaging. I get called an added bonus, but it feels very, very, very slick, which is great because it helps deflect, accidental contact with your vehicle. Like, slickness does play a role in helping to minimize damage or scratching, and feels fantastic just when you're touching your car, washing and drying, whatever. It's definitely one of the strong points as well of this product. Now, when I'm going with this second towel, it came off so easily the first time. It's like no effort. This is such an easy thing. I'm just making sure I get, this is about evenness, even coverage, in case I miss something, just in case type of thing, then I'm going back over it. And also the fact that this second towel is not getting the heavy initial loading since I'm using that other towel. Now I've done that fender, the mirror, this pebble, this is that type of trim I'm talking about. It darkened it a little bit. and I've done this door and I've done this area, and I'm still on the first side of each of these towels. And just to show you guys how serious I am about the fact that you don't need to stress about this in the window that you have that you can leave the product, I'm leaving the product on this door. I'm gonna finish applying to the rest of the car without taking that off. This is not something I recommend doing. There's not a benefit, you know, to doing that I would suggest doing that all the time, but just to show you that I can still wipe it off when I'm done with the rest of the vehicle, I'm gonna leave that on there. So here we go. Okay, so the door. Some of you guys are probably sweating about that a little bit. Now the point here is leaving it this way, again, not an optimal thing, not recommended, not something to do on purpose. But if you do it, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't feel grabby right now. I'm not having a difficult time doing this. But what you will typically notice if you have waited too long, or if you try and do too large of an area at a time, is you're gonna have just a little bit of an oily type film that if you look just right in the right lighting, that is left behind after you kind of make your pass. Now, that can be an indicator of a couple things. It can be that your towel's oversaturated, and it can be that you waited a little bit too long, or a combination of the two. So I just wanted to make the point that you're not seeing here grunting and having a hard time wiping this off. And you know, I'm still able to level this. I don't recommend it though, because you know, I could even find, you know, I was pushing the limits on the hood in terms of how much area I'm covering, and I could see a little bit more of a smear when I was removing that than if I'm following the directions like to a T. And you know, if I'm doing this for the first time, how I would recommend it is do a 2x2, sit and wait, remove it. You know, I'm doing this, I've worked with this product a lot. I don't recommend you start off, you know, kind of pushing the envelope that way. But there you go. I mean, that's putting on a full coat on the vehicle. Now, my recommendation would be to do a second coat. And I would wait an hour in between coats. This is mostly to make sure you have even coverage, more so than stacking coverage. There's one neat thing too that I want to point out, and that is when you're doing this second coat, you will use less product than the first coat. And I verified that. I actually have sample cans, pre-production cans from testing, and I measured, you know, how much product was in here. I started off with 253 grams. After the first coat, I was down to 190 grams of product. And then I waited an hour and did a second coat, and I only went down to 151 total weight of 151 grams. So the difference there, in that initial time, I was using 63 grams of product. The second coat, 39. So what that's telling me is that the product is filling in the paint and leaving a layer there, so that when you're doing that second coat, you need less product in order to put a coat on there, because there's already product there filling in the paint. And it's a really kind of a neat thing. But you know, bottom line is that was on this can I used on a full-size four-door Toyota Tundra. And this other can, very similar. I went from 254 grams to 188 after the first coat, and that was on a full-size Mercedes-Benz S-Class. So those are pretty large vehicles, plenty of product. You don't need to stress. You don't need to overuse product, but you got plenty of product to do maintenance. Say something happens to your vehicle, you can touch it up without having to buy a whole new kit every time. Okay, so just in the interest of time, I'm not going to show you putting on the second coat. Again, same exact process. You're just going to use a little bit less product. It's going to be a little bit easier, a little bit quicker. I'd recommend, if you know, like in this case, my towels didn't get super clogged. I still had plenty of clean sides, and that's why you fold them. Don't ball it up, because then you have two sides to a towel instead of 8, you know, and be able to fold it around, you know. So fold your towels, you'll get more use out of it. Get a third towel if need be. If you're finding that you're not easily wiping everything clean, it really shouldn't look super oily when you're done. Now, just a couple final tips. Again, hit that like and subscribe, hit that bell icon, and it will notify you when I release the next video in 1 week, where I will show you the follow-up first wash. Now, aftercare, this is super important. It says on the can to wait at least 12 hours before getting it wet. That's kind of a bare minimum. I strongly recommend, if at all possible, to avoid getting the vehicle wet with any kind of water, wash, chemical, anything, nothing, for at least 24 hours. Furthermore, it talks about waiting a full week before you do your initial wash. If at all possible, avoid anything intentionally going on this vehicle, moisture-wise, for a full week. And the reason is, the full cure will take place over that entire week. And it will vary a little bit based on, you know, how warm it is outside and those sorts of things. But if you wash the vehicle, let's say 3 days later, or start hitting it with chemicals or something like that, it will compromise it and you will remove part of the coating that didn't finish curing. So super emphasize, wait, if at all possible, a full week before you do your wash. And when you do that first wash, just use a normal pH balanced car wash soap, okay? Avoid using any other crazy chemicals, you know, until like your second week at least. Other than that, again, if you get a little bit something on your car in that first week, try and just use a microfiber with maybe a little bit of damp water on it, and if at all possible, just gently wipe that off, and it will really make a big difference to let it cure. Again, I will be back in about a week with another video so I can finally show you all the water beating, all the amazing stuff I'm talking about. It's really going to be pretty cool and impressive. Check back for that. We will also talk about a few other key things that we haven't touched on quite yet. But hope you enjoyed that. I know that was long. Hopefully you're still awake, and see you in a week. Is it on? Even better. All right.